So my name is Tom Dana. I'm a web developer and an internet marketer. I've got my own business. It's called Digital Sea. Sea is S-E-A, like the ocean, digitalsea.com. And I have an office in Grand Rapids, but I spend a lot of time in Muskegon. In fact, I'm more of a Muskegonite than Grand Rapids. I grew up here, and my family's been involved in the community for decades. I know my mom used to work when I was little. You may be familiar with the name The Nearly New. Have you heard of that? She used to volunteer there quite often when I was little. So I'm very familiar with Muskegon, and I'm interested in helping people in Muskegon and nonprofit organizations. So somehow I got involved with Karen. I think it was through a mutual Greg Callan, a friend of ours, and what coincidentally, she lives just a block away from where I grew up in North Muskegon. So that was pretty convenient. And I've been able to work on 3 projects through the Strengthening Muskegon grant, working with 3 nonprofits. One is the Holton Community Center, which I see the representative, is it Mary Phyllis? Yeah. And I've got your website up too, though, on my computer, so that helps. I've created a website for them. I created a website for Mentor Muskegon, which is all about finding mentors for children, teenagers, and also if a child wants a mentor, they can go to mentormuskegon.org and they can request a mentor. And what it is it's a website in which you can go to, and then it actually will place that person with the proper program. There's a collaboration of programs, Big Brothers Big Sisters, Embrace Muskegon. Karen could go through the list pretty quick. But I encourage you to take a look maybe after I talk for a few minutes. So the internet, what is the internet? Why do we need the internet? It's sort of like this evil that you have to be in, but sometimes you don't know what to do. There's different levels. It's all about communication. And if you want somebody to donate to your organization, or if you want someone to get involved with your organization, then you have to communicate. It's all about communication. So what I've been able to do, which is great, with Holton Community Center and for Mentor Muskegon, is I've created a website which I believe has most of the bells and whistles, the functions to properly communicate with whoever your audience might be. People can donate through the website. You can put up the latest news on the website. You can give them a calendar of events. And so that's what I've been able to do for them. And what I can do is I can go through, if you're interested after I talk, I can show you some of the features as far as the forms, the donate option with a credit card, things like that. So maybe you can look at it for your own organization and see if that's something that you might want to do. That would be the level where I can help you. Now, if money, obviously money is tight. So there are options out there that are totally free. And many of you are very familiar, I imagine, with them. There's having a Facebook page, totally free. That's different than a Facebook profile. It's not a profile, not a person. It's a business or an organization. It's called a Facebook page. You have fans. So that's free. The Twitter is free. What I suggest is having both of those in conjunction with each other. Even if you don't really know what Twitter is all about or care, some of the people that might be interested in your organization are into Twitter. So all you're doing is giving them the opportunity to follow you in the way they want to. So you can give them the option of following through Twitter, following your Facebook page. And then the key after that is you can put it in place. You can lead the horse to water, but you can't make it drink. It's all about having somebody internally within your organization that is interested in this tool, and is all about, on a day-to-day basis, what can we put on our Facebook page? Or what news is coming out? What success story can we just give out there? It doesn't matter if anybody reads it. It's irrelevant. I mean, it's important, but it's irrelevant from your point of view. You just want to put it out there, very succinct. And with those type of tools, it is very easy. So what I can offer is a minimal service of helping you with those free services.
Good afternoon, everyone. Glad to be back with you again here in Muskegon. I'm based in East Lansing, but I always love coming to town. It reminds me of summer and of warmer, better days, so it's always fun to be here with you. For some of you who have been with me for workshops, you might recall that I mentioned that prior to starting my firm that focuses on nonprofit and faith-based organizations, that I ran a regional advertising agency for about 22 years. During that time, I was asked to market or sell, if you will, just about everything under the sun. Cars, hospitals, banks, airports, law firms, shoes, ham, children's games. And as I'm always reminded in these election years, occasionally I'd get a call from a political candidate. And I was thinking about this the other day, about a candidate that I worked with. They called and asked if I would shoot their television commercials for them. And the gentleman who was running in this congressional district asked that we follow him for 2 or 3 days and on the campaign trail, and then we would pull some ads together around that. So on the very first morning that we were doing this, it was about 7 a.m. We're all a little blurry-eyed. We're in a VFW hall in a small community. Place kind of smelled of hot coffee and cold eggs and a little cigarette smoke, and the room was full. And as this candidate was being introduced, he suddenly looked down at me with this kind of wide, panicked eyes, and he said, "What do you think I should say?" Funny enough, it was a really, really, really good question at a really, really, really bad time. But it's a question that all of you should be asking as well. And if I had had time with that candidate on that one day, what I would have done is taken him off into the side room and said, "Who are you? What do you stand for? And how are you even the slightest bit different than the other person you're running against?" And these are the questions I'm going to ask you today in our 10 minutes together. Who are you? What do you stand for? And how are you different? Now, I know in the nonprofit and faith-based world, we don't like to think of ourselves as competitors, but you might want to think of yourself as candidates, because we're all working for the same things, aren't we? We're working towards community awareness, the ability to have community engagement projects that work easily. We're looking for board members and volunteers and donations, all of these things. And as you know, the nonprofit and faith-based communities have exploded in the last 10 to 15 years. It's been about 12 or 13 years ago, 350,000 nonprofits in this country. It ballooned to 1.7 million in this country. Now it's sliding back. And I'm sure you've seen that happen as groups are consolidating services and otherwise. So typically when I get a phone call, people are calling and saying, "We want an ad campaign," or "We want a PR campaign," or "a community engagement campaign," or they'll call and for like the kind of services that Tom offers here, we're thinking about website or social media or otherwise, but they haven't had those first questions answered. Who are you? What do you stand for? How are you different? And that's the part that I like to work through with folks. Now, some of you may say, "Hey, I've got that part of it down." And the way you can test to see if you've got that part down is ask yourself, if you handed out a sheet of paper to all the people associated with your organization, from the top manager in your group to the individual that perhaps cleans your office, and you ask those 3 questions, and you laid those papers side by side, would they look the same? Or would they look like a patchwork quilt? The best resource you have is word of mouth. A brand, and you all have a brand, it's just a question, is it a strong brand or a weak brand, is controlled by those who know you. It's not what you want people to think of your brand, it's what people already think of you as a brand. So getting that part of it down And it is in many ways the free part, to the extent of the ability to spread the language. So when your board members are out talking or your community volunteers are out talking, they say, hey, tell me about that organization. Are they repeating the same message over and over again? Once you get that core piece down, then you can go over and give Tom a call and say, we've got a message, now we need a website. Or we can help you get into social media, or we can help you get into PR campaigns or community engagement campaigns. But it's that core story that you need to get down first. So I hope that's what we're going to talk about. But otherwise, I am open and ready to answer your questions and engage you in anything that you've got concerns about in the world of communications, marketing, public relations, engagement. All right?
All right, good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be with you, and it's been great to have an opportunity to work with Strengthening Muskegon. I've been in the nonprofit sector since the mid-'70s, so I started my career in fundraising, moved into strategic planning, board leadership work, and the like. And over a period of time, the focus of what I do has centered on asking a specific question. So I have in my consulting practice a mission, and I work with organizations that are interested in the fulfillment of this mission. And the mission is a question, and the question is, how do we build a community to fulfill mission? That's the question, and that's the area that I work in. Particularly as it relates to the human service, faith-based sector. How do we build a community to fulfill mission? And so when I think about community, what I'm thinking about is volunteers, I'm thinking about donors, I'm thinking about staff, I'm thinking about clients or care receivers, I'm thinking about board members, and other types of partners that may be engaging with our work. But the question that we have as leaders ultimately drives to that point of how do we fulfill mission. And so the challenge that I try to place before any organization I work with is to make sure that every step we take is an absolute reflection of our understanding of mission. Because it's mission that will feed every aspect of what we do. To work to trust that our mission is substantial enough that it can generate profound levels of passion that can move mountains. I have to have that belief, and I have to transmit that belief to all people that I come in contact with. I have to be able to understand and to discern that which might be a distraction from me moving that mission forward. But the more we can trust what mission is, the more we can learn how to articulate it and to experience it, the more energy we generate, the more the more community we build around what it is we're trying to do, and the more we transform life. When I think about community and I look at those elements, volunteers, donors, care receivers, board members, staff, I see them as co-equal, interdependent, not one above the other. We need all of those elements working together to fulfill mission. We play a variety of different roles, and can we see ourselves all being teachers and students at the same time? How do we find that solidarity that brings the gifts and talents that have been brought together to become light? All of that's possible, but it starts with a dream, it starts with a vision, and it starts with a commitment to trust what we talk about when we talk about mission. So that's the question I try to unpack, and I try to unpack it in terms of board development programs. How do we recruit board members that are focused on mission fulfillment? How do we recruit staff members who are not looking for a job, but looking for profound meaning. How do we engage donors so that they understand when I make a gift, I am in fact experiencing mission. I'm actualizing mission through the act of that gift, and on and on. So those are the kinds of things we try to look at. I look forward to spending a few minutes with you, and I'll leave it at that.
My name is Brenda Jacobs, and I am a partner with Brickley DeLong here in Muskegon. And this is Ed Elsner. He's one of our managers. And both Ed and I deal quite a bit with nonprofit accounting and tax work within our office. And I've been with Brickley DeLong for 20 years, and I've been working in the nonprofit arena for that long. And I still recall the very first time I went out on my first nonprofit audit, and realizing that nonprofits are different. You operate differently than a for-profit entity. And so many of your board members may come from the profit sector. And so it's a different education process from our perspective. But I want to give you a little bit of background of what we do. Brickley DeLong is a tax and accounting firm. We do tax work, and nonprofits have tax work. And most of your organizations, actually all of your organizations now, require some form of a 990 tax return. And there's different levels of a 990 tax return. And I really hope that all of you have filed at least, if you're below 25,000 of gross receipts, that you've at least done your electronic postcard online, which is a little, you go online and fill it out, and that's your submission of your 990, and that suffices a filing with the IRS. If you have more than $25,000 of gross receipts but less than $200,000, a 990 EZ is what applies to your organization. And if it's more than $200,000 of gross receipts, you have to do the full-fledged 990. So every organization in this room has some sort of a 990 that's applicable. So if you're sitting here and you're thinking, I'm not sure if I've done my 990 filing, then we probably need to talk and we can educate you later. But there is some sort of a tax filing that's required for every organization. And the other thing I talked about was accounting. Every organization has to have some sort of bookkeeping or accounting system that you do. And hopefully Karen's talked with you a little bit about accounting, and I know she works with QuickBooks and probably recommends QuickBooks to some of your organizations. QuickBooks Consulting is another area that our firm does. But that program, when we've done some of our sessions here, we've done some budgeting with QuickBooks at a couple of the presentations we've done, and that's a nice little program for nonprofit organizations. Starting out, it's pretty user-friendly, so that's another area. But every organization, no matter what type of a bookkeeping product that you use, needs to have some sort of accounting function. You need to have personnel who have some basic background in accounting or bookkeeping to help you keep track of your records throughout the year. And that's something that organizations like our firm and other firms can help you get through that process with. Other things that our firm does is we can help with walking you through with budgeting. That was another one of the sessions that we presented on. And budgeting is different for every organization. There's similarities, but depending on what your projects are, what your mission is and what you do is going to depend on how you approach your budget. So those are things that we talked about. As far as Ed's going to talk a little bit about internal control. This is something we talked about it quite a bit in a couple of our sessions, though. It's very important in the organization. to have good internal control. So I'm going to let Ed talk a little bit about that.
My name's Ed, and I've been with Brickley DeLong for about 8 years now. And at Brickley DeLong, we have about 30 staff members, maybe a little bit more depending on the time of the year. We fluctuate due to the seasonality of what we do. But at Brickley DeLong, the amount of people that we have there, it really allows us all to kind of specialize in our niches or kind of take tangents. Accounting is such a broad field. You have tax, you have audit, and even within the tax and audit, you have different fields you can go down. So that's why you've seen a lot of different Brickley DeLong people present in front of you in front of these seminars. But some of the areas that I focus on is the internal controls and the fraud aspect of it. You can't really deal with accounting without talking about fraud. So I've got some slides back there. When you guys meet with us individually, we can talk about what may cause fraud or what to look at when you're looking at fraud and how that relates to your internal controls, what you're doing on a day-to-day transactions. Also going to talk to you a little bit about some document and retention policies that you may have or you may need. And then also, what exactly are formal financial statements? Why, as an organization, do you need them? What part can your CPAs play in helping you create those formal financial statements? And then also, it's possible that we could do a review or an audit on those formal financial statements, what we call our assurance services. So there's lots of different ways that we can provide services to you.
It's just a little bit of background about what an accounting firm can do to help you out and what we at Brickley DeLong can do here locally to assist you with any of your needs.
Thank you. The connection that my partner and I have with one another started in 1996. We were both working for a think tank in the state of Washington, and in fact it is the conservative think tank in the state of Washington, because there aren't any others. And both of our husbands were military, assigned my husband to a medical facility. Her husband at the time was a ranger. We joked about we couldn't know what Lee did because he'd have to kill us. And he probably would have. But anyway, Terry and I, obviously because we were connected with military, moved around a lot with our husbands' assignments. Both of us kind of stuck with think tanks. And I was hired specifically to work on welfare reform. Welfare reform passed on August the 26th, 1996. I went to work for this group in 1997 in September, just less than 2 weeks after welfare reform passed. And my boss there said, I want you to start working on faith-based initiatives because that's where welfare reform will go. And so by the time 2000 rolled along, I had an amazing experience. I had connected with faith-based and community-based grassroots organizations all over the country. I knew the governor's faith-based liaisons. I knew people who were working in that job but didn't have the title. And in the process, they talk in science about being sucked down a vortex or a black hole. Well, that's where I went. Okay? And I developed this passion for faith-based and grassroots organizations, as did Terry. Primarily because we saw people who had this amazing skill. They knew how to work locally and know people and still help them. When you get to know people, sometimes you don't want to help them. What I also met were amazing people that knew how to literally get blood out of a turnip. You can leverage people, resources, creativity, think outside the box, and frankly, it's just way fun. I began work when we moved here to Muskegon. My husband retired from the military and began working in a medical practice here. And I went to work in Lansing and got to be friends with policy people that were working on welfare reform. And a couple of guys that headed up social services for appropriations and policy at the time were both from Grand Rapids, and they said, we want to have this great big community network of trainers, a couple 3 days, because we work in Lansing and we know you're not going to get anything out of there. So we're going to learn how to build, we want people to network and build a group at the local level. And so I pulled my friend Terry in, who did fund development, and she was going to just teach a class to teach grassroots groups how to do fund development. And she pretty soon, started pulling from this piece and pulling from that piece, and pretty soon that turned into a book. Oh well, we'll just do the book. And that's in some materials that we have for you today. We'll provide services to anybody, but we frankly think that there is something extremely special about grassroots organizations that are just, the community is in your DNA. Some of you do what you do because of the faith that motivates you, others because you've got a vision for what things could be and where you live. And that's exciting. And frankly, I have learned a lot more from you all the last 2 years than I think anybody could have learned from me. I will admit I am in your face all the time, okay? I don't apologize for that. As I say to all the clients when they came, the good news is that I live here. The bad news is I live here. Part of the good news is there's an end to the Strengthening Muskegon grant, but the bad news is there's not an end to me. That's right. Okay? I think the biggest thing, to ask any of you, what's your one most pressing need? I know what you'd say. You all said it to me. Money. We need money. And the hardest thing has been for you to back up and say, why should I give you any money? And some of you I know probably weren't real excited when I said, I love you, I love what you do. At this point in time, I wouldn't give you a dime. And so a lot of the things that you have had to do are just pieces of that. Who are you? What do you do? What are your core values? Linda did a mission and vision. What's your mission? And I do it because is not good enough. So that's really the passion that Terry and I have brought to what we do. We had hoped that her husband's a commander, and the Army decided they needed him in Europe. She's 6 hours ahead of me now. Have you ever tried to do email constantly with somebody that's 6 hours ahead? It's tough. It is really tough. So today when we talk, know that I've got a couple of things for you. Number one, I have a CD for you that has the PowerPoints from the fund development, evaluation and logic models, and volunteer management that we did. And then in the spirit of kind of what Terry and I do on an ongoing basis, I have added a lot of other materials that are there. There is a lot of stuff that's on the internet that's really appropriate for grassroots organizations. There's also a lot of stuff that frankly is way beyond what you're ever going to need. So I think the biggest advantage, and one of the things I'm glad you've got to participate in Strengthening Muskegon, is because you've been able to focus on local. You've been able to focus on what you have instead of having to go someplace across the state or have people who are tremendous professionals, but they work for nonprofits on a very different level than what you do. So I just want to take this opportunity to say it's been really fun for me to get to meet you, and it's great to have all these new best friends.
First of all, I wanted to say, just to hear how this has affected your organization and helped your organizations. It's really gratifying as an advisory committee member to know we made some tough decisions and are helping grassroots organizations. And to echo Karen, I believe in the power of grassroots organizations. I think you guys do phenomenal work, and I'm just appreciative that you are in our community and doing the work you do. I also want to give a shout out to Linda. She has done an amazing job in coordinating all the workshops and the TA, and also communicating with the advisory committee so that we knew what was happening and the help you guys were getting. So that's all I wanted to say, and thank you very much.
Accentuate the positive, eliminate the negative. Latch on to the affirmative and don't mess with Mr. In Between. And that is what Strengthening Muskegon is all about. Yes! Woo! Yeah!